Welcome to Unleash the Awesome with Dave Gambrill. All of us have unique skills, talents, and abilities that aren't being used to their full potential. Our mission is to share the people, tools, apps, and other resources that will help you unleash your awesome on the world.
Yo, what's up, friends? This is Dave. Today's episode is all about content creation and a framework that I use called Who's the Who, So What? I know it sounds like a Dr. Seuss thing, but hear me out. We'll jump into that in just a second, but first I want to let you know about a wonderful resource that I use every single day in my business. It helps me with my content creation. It helps me with creating my offers. It helps me with selling my stuff online, my information products, my courses, my coaching, all of that. And it's a book by my friend Russell Brunson. It's called Expert Secrets. If you go to gambrill.com/expert secrets, that's my affiliate link, and you can get a copy of the book for just the cost of shipping. And Russell has all kinds of other great resources and stuff that he'll offer you as well. So if it makes sense for you, go ahead and jump on it. But again, the book is called Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson, and you can grab it at my affiliate link, which is gambrill.com/expert secrets. I'll make sure that you have access to that in the show notes. Okay, let's get into content creation. You've probably heard me say before, and you've probably heard other people say before, that content creation is critical if you want to have success online, period. And it doesn't really matter where you start. You should just start somewhere and get it out there. And in future episodes of this podcast, I'll talk about some of the other ways that I have found that have been pretty successful. But let's just agree that you need to create content. And if you're smart, you'll do what I call pre-purposing that content, not repurposing, but pre-purposing. I think that's a term that I made up. I'm not sure. I've not seen it listed anywhere else before, but pre-purposing simply means if you think about where it is you're going to use that content, then when you create it, you can chop it up a bunch of different ways. What do I mean by that? There are interviews and other things that I've done with people where I have done a Zoom call with them. So using an app called Zoom, and we did a video call and we recorded it. And then I used that video in a YouTube video. I used that video on a Facebook Live where I talked about some stuff, and then I piped in the video. I stripped out the audio, and I've used it as a podcast before. So I use it for photo quotes. All kinds of things I did with it. So there's lots of things I knew that I was going to do with it before I did it. So that way I could do it in such a way that I knew I could chop it up. And if you're going to do something that is evergreen, and by that what we mean is something that's going to live on past a certain date, then you make sure you just record that content without making any references to current events. Like, I'm recording this, it's February 8th right now as I record this. And so one, if I was doing Evergreen, I wouldn't tell you that. And two, I wouldn't make any reference probably to the Super Bowl that just happened last weekend or the halftime show or anything like that. If I could talk about it, I could refer to it, but I just wouldn't be time specific about it, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's all Evergreen means. It's just something that's going to live on for a while, whether that's an offer that you have out there or just content. And I want to try to create a lot of content that's evergreen, because who knows when you have entered into my world, into my ecosystem, into my funnel, this could be day one for you, and this could be the first episode you've ever heard. Maybe you've never heard of me before. And so I need to make sure that as I'm creating this content, I'm doing it in a way that as you discover it, it stands on its own, and it also stands the test of time. Okay, so that's one thing to think about with your content creation. But I know a lot of you approach me with the question, Dave, what the heck do I talk about? What am I supposed to talk about? And this is a very basic framework that I came up with, but it's very powerful. And you don't need to do a content calendar, and you don't need to have a Trello board to track all this. It's pretty simple if you do the homework up front. So I call it Who's the Who, So What? Okay, so Who's the Who simply means who is your audience? Who are you speaking to? Who is your customer avatar? Who is your unique customer? There's all kinds of things they call it. Persona, right? Look all those things up. They all generally mean the same thing. Who is your customer? Who's your ideal customer? And if you don't know who that person is, then do some research into that. Figure out who it is you're trying to attract to your business. Who is the typical demographic and psychographic makeup of that audience? And by that, I just mean, like, what do they think? How do they think about things? What are their thoughts on certain stuff? And the demographics is clearly just, age, income, stuff like that. So you want to have some idea of who your ideal customer is. That way, when you're creating your content, you can be thinking about that person and speaking to them a certain way. When I do this podcast, for example, it's called Unleash the Awesome. And the people that I'm targeting are people that are getting a little frustrated with their mundane way of life. Maybe they're living a life of quiet desperation, and they know there's a little more. They know there's something beyond whatever their cubicle existence is for their job that they've had. It's just sucking the life out of them, and they want to do something different. And what I'm trying to do is provide the tools and the information and the resources to help those people escape that and then unleash their awesome on the world. So those are the kind of people that I'm targeting generally. And so when I'm doing these podcasts, I tend to speak to that person or think about that person. Okay, so that's my customer avatar in a nutshell. You can do a lot more work on it. You can go research courses and books and all kinds of stuff to help you do a deep dive on this. But if you don't know who you're trying to attract or who your customer is, it's really hard to do anything else in your business. So if you've not done that exercise before, dig into that a little bit. Once you know that, once you know who that person is or who those people are, then the content creation piece becomes a little easier. Okay, so the who is, okay, who am I talking to? Who's my audience? What is my demographic, my psychographic, my persona? And then the so what piece is simply this. As I go out and do my day-to-day stuff, right? I'm recording this on a Saturday morning. It's about 11 a.m. I've already gone out and got my car washed, went to the grocery store, did some other things, ran some errands. I encountered lots of opportunities, lots of stories, lots of teachable moments that I will eventually share on this podcast, that I'll share on my Facebook group, Digital Marketing Mentorship with Dave Gambrell. If you've not joined us over there, you might want to do that, because I get more into the nitty gritty and the specifics of growing your email list, selling your stuff online. But I encountered a bunch of stuff. And so I just capture those moments, and you can capture them wherever you want. I tend to do it in Trello or Evernote, but you could write it down on a piece of paper if you can track that piece of paper. But I like to put it in one of those digital places, because then I can find it on my computer or whatever. So you could use the Notes app on your phone. I use Evernote or Trello, some other things like that. And I just capture the thought, capture the idea. Sometimes I take a picture, and it'll remind me enough to go, oh, I need to tell this story. So the so what piece is this. So what does this thing mean to my audience? So what does this thing mean to my avatar? So as I'm encountering things, I'll share that. So let me give you an example. A couple weeks ago, I was going to get a key made. So one of my kids needed another key for the house. So I'm like, okay, so I'm just going to get one key. The purpose was to get one key. And yes, I could go to a locksmith, and I do have a relationship with the local locksmith, but time was of the essence. I just needed a key made. So I went to Lowe's, the hardware store near me, and they have a kiosk. I think it's called Minute Key. And the idea is you basically just put your key in there, and then it will grind a key to match it and give you a key. That's it. However, as I was engaging with this machine, it started asking me all of these questions and doing all kinds of things that you would want to do in a sales funnel. It was doing upsells and cross-sells, and do you want another extra key for just 50 cents more, or like a one-time offer? All of these things that Russell Brunson talks about in his book, Expert Secrets, that I mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast. But all the things that you would want to do in a business anyway. You're already getting somebody to take their credit card out of their pocket and pay. And so while they're in that mode, why don't you offer them some other things? So this machine was trying to offer me, like, I just wanted a plain key, like a plain, whatever color that is. I don't know what color that key is, silver, brass, I don't know, copper, whatever that is, just a plain key. And it was like, based on my zip code, where we were, it's like, oh, do you want a Yankees or a Giants or a Mets or a Eagles key? Do you want a special rubberized thing on the handle for the key? Do you want an additional key for just whatever, half price, 50% off, whatever? Like all of this stuff. So it went through this whole cycle. And as I was doing it, I was like, oh, wait, hold on. This is a great teachable moment for my audience. There's a big so what here. This is a sales funnel in real life, and I can show this to people. So I quit the sales process so I could start over. And then I just took pictures of each screen. And then I went and I bought my key, and I was like, oh, I love this. What a great opportunity. They're doing this really well. I'm sure they make a lot of extra money on this kiosk. So cool. And then when I came home, I did a Facebook Live, and I talked about it. And I talked about some of the pages that they ran me through in the funnel and things like that. And so what was, listen, you guys read this stuff in Expert Secrets, or we talk about this in this group all the time. so what I'm trying to show you, or so what this means, or so what they're doing with this machine is they're doing all the stuff we talk about: upsells, cross-sells, one-time offers, order bumps, all of that stuff. And so the so what was me just translating so what that experience means to my audience, to my customer persona, whatever. So if you know who your who is, if you know who you're talking to, then just about anything you encounter in your day-to-day life, especially a sales environment, then you can turn that into a so what, meaning so what does this mean to your audience? And then you can create an Instagram post with that, a tweet, a whole podcast episode, Facebook Lives, a photo quote. There's all kinds of things you could do with it. And it turned out that then later that weekend, I went to another hardware store that we have near us, Home Depot. And as I was checking out, I was checked out with a person, a real human being for a cashier. And they were asking me some questions about some upsells for their credit card and all this other stuff. So there was another opportunity for me to talk about, listen, they're going to miss 100% of the shots they don't take here. This person's asking, I'm sure he's being incentivized. Like if he got, X amount of people to sign up for their credit card, he was probably getting some kind of bonus. And so I was talking about that kind of thing. And then also in that same Home Depot, because I went back, that always happens when you're doing a project. You can't just make one trip. Usually you forget something. So I had doubled back and I went through the self-checkout, and I had noticed that on the machine for the self-checkout, one of the things it asked me was, it made it really hard for me to print a receipt. It basically was like, hey, we can email you your receipt. And I was like, maybe. Because I'm thinking, wow, this is brilliant. Look at Home Depot capturing my email address to build their email list. And I talk about that all the time, build your email list. If it's good enough for Home Depot, it's probably good enough for you. So you can see just these few transactions that I had, just running errands on the weekend, became 3 and 4 and 5 different conversations that I could have with my audience. And I could teach them, like there's teachable moments from each one of those things. So you don't need to be going out and trying to create these earth-shattering pieces of content, whatever. Just take stuff that's happening in your real world and essentially document it, and then just provide the so what, the translation to so what this means to your audience, and then you got it. If you want to look at some other resources, then go check out a book. Like those of you that are in the leadership development space, there's a book called and now it's escaping me, but there's a John Maxwell book where I think it's called the Maxwell Daily Reader, and it's like 365 days of leadership stuff. So you could just read it's really only like a page or two each day on leadership, and then share that with your audience and cite the source, of course. Hey, I read this on page 36 in the Maxwell Daily Reader. One of the things John Maxwell is talking about leadership, blah, blah, blah. So what this means to you, right? And you just translate that to your audience. Sometimes I do it with Expert Secrets. There's some really big books that Tim Ferriss put out, The Tribe of Mentors and Tools of Titans, where he interviews people, or they were basically like a Reader's Digest version of some of his podcast episodes, where they were talking to people, and then each interview was broken down into like 5 or 6 pages. So you could just read the 5 or 6 pages about whoever. Arnold Schwarzenegger's in one of them, the guy Ev Williams from Twitter, one of the founders. You could just read those and say, hey, listen, I was reading this article or this interview that Tim Ferriss did with Ev Williams at Twitter, and one of the things they talked about is this, and then you can share that little story, and then you say, and what that means to you is, or how this translates to you is, or the so what this means for you is, and that's it. So once you build this into your everyday life, like it'll take a little bit. You'll have to be persistent about it. You'll have to keep it top of mind. It has to be conscious in your conscious mind for a while. You have to consciously do it. But after you do it for a while, it just becomes subconscious for me. And the same thing will happen for you. I was at an event not too long ago called Funnel Hacking Live. I was there for like 6 days. The event is 4 days, but I came in a day early, left a day late. There's 5,000 people roaming around this hotel. There's keynote speeches all day. There's all kinds of breakout sessions, things happening at lunch and dinner and breakfast and whatever. And I literally probably have at least 100. I'm not kidding. This is not an exaggeration. I probably have 100 different pieces of content that I can talk about from that event. And one of the ways I did it to capture it, because I knew I wouldn't remember it all, is I used Evernote or Trello or just took pictures. And then sometimes when I'm sitting down thinking about mapping out my episodes for this podcast or for some other things that I'm doing, I just look at the pictures and I go, oh yeah. And then I just jot those down as I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about that, whatever. So you don't need to create a content calendar. You don't need to make this harder than it is. Now, I know some of you are going to want to create a calendar and do all that fun stuff, and there's plenty of resources that will help you do that. But if you just want to do it on the fly and not make it a lot of extra work, then just use this who's the who, so what framework, and it'll be really simple for you to create content. Okay, hope that served you. Again, who's the who, so what. Put that into your day-to-day activities, and you'll be able to share a ton of content with your audience without trying very hard. It will eventually just come naturally to you. All right, that's all I got for this episode of Unleash the Awesome. Do me a favor, if you've liked this or any of the other episodes, share it with a friend. Share this on social media. I'm trying to get as many people as possible to listen to this in the early days of the podcast, because the higher it goes up in the ratings, especially the new and notable, then more people will be able to discover it and find it, and it will help me on my mission to help people unleash their awesome on the world. So if you'd be willing to do that, I would really appreciate it. All right, until next time, go unleash your awesome on the world. See ya.
Thanks for listening to Unleash the Awesome. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please share us on your favorite social media platforms using #UnleashAwesome.